President Trump says a peace deal in Gaza is close, as he warns Hamas of complete obliteration if they back out now.
We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down and concrete. I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents.
I'm Georgia Howe. John's out this week. It's Monday, October 6th, and this is Morning Wire. Homeland Security says a group of domestic terrorists ambushed immigration officials in Chicago, and Mexican cartels have put out bounties on ICE agents.
It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures.
And prosecutors are furious after Justice Kavanaugh's would-be assassin gets a sweetheart deal from a Biden-appointed judge. Thanks for waking up with Morning Wire. Stay tuned. We have the news you need to know.
Consistency is everything when it comes to your health, but life gets busy, and honestly, remembering to reorder supplements every month, that's just one more thing on your already packed to-do list. That's why I became a Balance of Nature preferred customer, and here's why it's a total game changer. Your supplements show up like clockwork every 28 days right to your doorstep. No remembering to reorder, no running out, it just happens automatically. And here's the kicker. You're getting the lowest price Balance of Nature offers every single time. No hunting for deals, no promo codes, no stress. Plus, shipping is totally free every month. But what really sold me is you get your own personal health coach. Someone who actually checks in, cheers you on, and helps you stay on track with your goals. The easiest routines are the ones you don't have to think about. You handle life, Balance of Nature handles the rest. Right now, you can become a preferred customer and lock in wholesale pricing with free shipping every month. Head over to balanceofnature.com and make consistency automatic. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code WIRE for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code WIRE.
President Trump says Israel and Hamas have agreed to his peace proposal and will soon begin the formal process of ending the war in Gaza. Daily Wire senior editor Cabot Phillips has the latest. So, Cabot, we could be on the verge of a very significant peace agreement. What's the latest?
Well, right off the top, we must say that we've seen ceasefires and peace treaties fall apart repeatedly throughout this conflict. So obviously there's good reason for caution. But according to President Trump, this war could soon be over. It all started last week when he hosted Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu at the White House and laid out his formal 20-point plan for peace. Among other things, it included the release of all hostages within 72 hours, demands for all Hamas terrorists to turn in their arms, the destruction of all Hamas military infrastructure, including their vast tunnel system, and of course, guarantees that Hamas will have, quote, no role in the governance of Gaza. On the flip side, Trump's plan also says that no Palestinians would be forced to leave Gaza, and many who have could return. It also offers amnesty for Hamas terrorists who surrender peacefully, and also vague mention of a pathway to Palestinian statehood and self-determination, though no guarantees were given there, and Israel does appear unlikely to budge on that front. Trump made clear Friday that this was his final offer, saying, quote, if this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell like no one has ever seen before will break out against Hamas. And that seemed to finally get the ball rolling.
Now, walk us through. We had a number of developments over the weekend. What happened?
So within hours of that just dire warning from Trump on Friday, Hamas officials issued a statement of their own, thanking him for his efforts at peace and saying that they would release all 48 hostages, both the living and the dead, though we're not yet sure exactly how many of those remaining are still alive. President Trump responded quickly, calling on Israel to cease bombing in Gaza to allow for the safe transfer of hostages, and then writing on Truth Social, quote, based on the statement just issued by Hamas, I believe they are ready for a lasting peace. Israel must immediately stop the bombing of Gaza so that we can get the hostages out safely and quickly. And then here he is speaking after that from the Oval Office.
This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down and concrete. Very importantly, I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents and having some of the hostages, unfortunately, you know the condition they're in, come home likewise to their parents because their parents wanted them just as much as though that young man or young woman were alive.
Hamas on Friday also agreed to hand over control of Gaza to a, quote, Palestinian body of independent technocrats. That was another condition laid out by Trump in that formal peace plan. For their part, the Israelis agreed to reduce their military activity in Gaza, quote, to a minimum and engage only in defensive fighting in the meantime. They also appear ready to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in Israel and hundreds more captured within Gaza during the war.
Now, we had the most significant developments on Saturday. What happened then?
So on Saturday, President Trump posted on Truth Social that Israel had, quote, agreed to the initial withdrawal line, which we have shown to and shared with Hamas. That post included an image with those proposed lines for the Israeli military, along with assurances that, quote, when Hamas confirms those lines, the ceasefire will be immediately effective. The hostages and prisoner exchange will begin, and we will create the conditions for the next phase of withdrawal, which will bring us close to the end of this 3,000-year catastrophe. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it bears repeating, there are still plenty of folks in the international community who are hesitant to celebrate a peace just yet, and for good reason. Anytime you're dealing with a terror group like Hamas, it's tough to take them at their word. For his part, the president is sending a delegation led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They're going to Egypt to ensure the hostage swap goes off smoothly, and then they'll sit down with officials from each country to talk through the fine print. The biggest sticking point right now appears to be the requirement that Hamas hand over all of their weapons and then refrain from any future say in governance. But as these talks take place, President Trump has continued to vow enormous consequences if they back out now, saying, quote, I will not tolerate delay, which many think will happen, or any outcome where Gaza poses a threat again. Regardless, looks like we'll know very soon if this deal is going to hold up and hopefully end this bloody conflict.
Well, just a reminder, tomorrow is October 7th. It will be 2 years. Cabot, thanks for reporting.
Absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by American Beverage, representing the local and many family-owned bottlers and distributors of Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, and Pepsi products operating in all 50 states. These are drinks we've all loved for generations. These iconic brands are part of the American story and have been for over 100 years. With all the talks about American jobs lately, American beverage companies have been delivering on that promise all along. They always have been and always will be American companies making American products with American workers in American hometowns. 275,000 men and women in all 50 states show up every day, do the work, and deliver for our economy and our communities. Learn more about America's beverage companies at wedeliverforamerica.org.
ICE agents in Chicago were attacked over the weekend by anti-ICE agitators. Federal officials were forced to draw weapons in self-defense, sending at least one woman to the hospital. Daily Wire reporter Tim Pierce is here to talk about the attack on ICE and the Trump administration's continued deportation efforts. So, Tim, wild events in Chicago. What happened?
Yeah, ICE officers were ambushed on Saturday, boxed in by 10 vehicles. One of the agitators, Homeland Security has called them domestic terrorists, was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. According to a Homeland Security spokeswoman, quote, law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for her wounds. 2 people have been arrested. The woman referenced by the department is allegedly Miramar Martinez, who officials said was known before the incident for making threats against immigration enforcement. After the attack, Chicago police actually left the area and, according to Homeland Security, left federal agents in a precarious situation. That's just one instance of what Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says is a lack of local and state support and why the military is coming to Chicago to help.
We will go into Chicago, we will go into Portland, and we'll make sure we have the backs of our law enforcement. And that's what the Department of War is providing for us. When we go out and do operations and the local law enforcement are told to stand down, that they can't be there for us, it's extremely dangerous for these ICE officers, for these CBP agents that are out there trying to help go after these dangerous criminals.
For his part, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Sunday was telling the Trump administration to get out of his city.
They're raiding neighborhoods where instead of going after the bad guys, they're just picking up people who are brown and black and then checking their credentials. Are you a U.S. citizen? I don't know about you, but I don't carry around papers that say I'm a U.S. citizen. They are the ones that are making it a war zone. They need to get out of Chicago. If they're not going to focus on the worst of the worst, which is what the president said they were going to do, they need to get the heck out.
Now, last week, we reported that Portland, Oregon was in Trump's sights as a place that he wanted to send in National Guard to support the immigration efforts there. What's the status in Portland?
Yeah, there are already immigration officers on the ground in Portland, and they've had to deal with threats, protests, a lot of interference. The Trump administration planned to send National Guard troops to Portland, but a federal judge, one actually nominated by President Trump, barred troops from being sent to Portland. The judge said that the situation doesn't meet the bar for a federalization of the National Guard. Now, California Governor Gavin Newsom says that Trump is sending 300 California National Guard troops to Portland anyway. That hasn't been confirmed by the Trump administration. The White House says that the president will win the case on appeal.
Now, on top of all of the threats that ICE agents are facing domestically, we're also seeing reports that the cartels are targeting them as well.
Right. Drug cartels have put bounties on immigration officers, which makes efforts by activists and agitators to identify federal agents all the more dangerous. Here's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Intelligence indicates that these people are organized. They're getting more and more people on their team as far as attacking officers, and they're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures. They've sent them between their networks, and it's an extremely dangerous situation and unprecedented.
And all that on top of a roughly 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers, according to the Department of Homeland Security.
A very scary job right now. Tim, thanks for reporting.
Thanks for having me on.
In 2022, a man was charged with attempting to assassinate a justice of the U.S. after he turned himself in outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh with a gun and burglary tools. On Friday, a judge sentenced him to just 8 years in prison, citing in large part his recent gender transition. Daily Wire investigative reporter Luke Rosiak was there in the courtroom for the sentencing. So, Luke, tell us about this verdict, and also, how did transgenderism come up?
Hey, Georgia. It honestly felt like the judge perceived Nicholas Roski rather than Judge Kavanaugh to be the victim here. Federal sentencing guidelines called for 30 years to life, but Judge Deborah Boardman, a Joe Biden appointee to the Maryland federal court, spent 7 hours justifying a 22-year downward departure. Another interesting thing you mentioned, the transgender element, Nicholas Roski's lawyer said that he's now Sophie Roski, a transgender woman. Judge Boardman seemed very sympathetic to that. She said, quote, Miss Roski came out to herself as transgender in 2020, but kept it secret. Miss Roski's sister came out as gay 2 years prior, but Miss Roski saw that their parents struggled to reconcile her sexuality with their religious beliefs. I am heartened to see that this terrible infraction has helped the Roski family accept their daughter for who she is. Roski's mother, Colleen, told the judge that she, quote, attended PFLAG meetings and learned about the LGBTQ plus community and is committed to going on this journey with Sophie. She said she was, quote, frustrated with what was going on in the world, and we weren't a safe place to process it.
So how did they even get onto the topic of transgenderism? Why was that germane to the sentencing?
So Judge Boardman said prison is especially hard for transgenders. Quote, the length doesn't need to be particularly long. Unduly harsh conditions make a difference too. Let's not hide the fact that President Trump issued an executive order saying transgender inmates would be assigned to prisons with their biological sex. Prosecutors actually replied that there is an injunction holding up much of that order, and the judge later acknowledged that was true, and Roski may actually get female hormones in prison even now. But she still gave out a lenient sentence based on the mere attempt by Trump and speculation that it might later be successful.
Now, is Roski making an apparent attempt to transition?
I mean, I'll say I was about 10 feet away from him, and he appeared as an unusually tall man with an unusually deep voice. There was no attempt to act feminine on his part. The insistence by the judge that he go to a women's prison or else spend little time in prison at all is especially odd because I reviewed his online post where he describes himself as transgender, but says he's attracted to women. The post also suggests he's a furry, which is a commonality with the boyfriend of the man who allegedly assassinated Charlie Kirk. Roski posted a classified saying he was a, quote, MTF pet seeking an owner.
So is the judge allowed to hand down a sentence this light if the mandatory sentence for trying to kill a justice is supposed to be 30 years to life?
Boardman said the Supreme Court couldn't force her to follow sentencing guidelines, saying, quote, they used to be mandatory, but in a Supreme Court case called Booker, the Supreme Court held that they were advisory. She acknowledged that Roski had committed domestic terrorism, but questioned the legitimacy of the U.S. Sentencing Commission's decades-old terrorism enhancement, saying, quote, I have not seen evidence that the Sentencing Commission relied on evidence that it would reduce recidivism.
Well, particularly fraught right after the Charlie Kirk assassination, you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, Roski did call police and confess before completing the act, and that was part of the reason for the light sentence. But Boardman really seemed to focus at least as much on these other factors.
Now, did the Kavanaughs give an impact statement to the court?
No. Now, Roski's family, including his parents and sister and himself, all spoke, and they emphasized his gender journey, need for therapy, and the emotional impact on the family. Kavanaugh's mother and wife were there, but didn't address the court. The moment the judge said Roski would be getting only 8 years, they abruptly left the room. The judge also subjected Roski to a lifetime of court supervision after his release, which could come in about 4 years with time served and good behavior.
Well, AG Pam Bondi did indicate the DOJ might attempt to appeal this sentence. Luke, thanks for reporting.
Of course.
Thanks for waking up with us. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We'll be back later this evening with more news you need to know.